taking a critical look at the gaming news of the week. This is Augmented Reality, presented by the Triple S League.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Augmented Reality podcast for January 4th, 2019. My name is Asheninity here for the Triple S League. Welcome, everybody. This is your source for news, leaks, and insights about the games and the gaming industry. It is January 4th. I already said that. Brand new year. Happy New Year, everybody. And I'm here, as always, with Cyb City. And how's it going today, sir?
Happy New Year. It is going good. I'm a little peeved, so we're going to be launching pretty quickly into a rant here. So.
Hashtag Cybrant coming up right away. But first, let's say hello to everybody in the chat. Whisper803, Rave, who says Redfall, Meriden, Overlord, 580, Max Mouse, Sword Sister, Megan Smart, and Notional, Dark Hollow. Wow, everybody's here. And for those who are just lurking and not talking in the chat, hello to you as well. We're glad everybody's here. Please send your comments and questions into the live chat. We'll read and respond to as many as we can throughout the podcast. And don't forget to slam that like button, likes it rough, to tell us and YouTube that you appreciate this content. If you're listening after the fact on one of the audio-only platforms, we're glad you're here as well. We appreciate your likes and follows. It does take us a day or two to get the podcast up on the audio platforms, so if you want to get the latest info sooner, we encourage you to hit the link in the description and subscribe to the Triple S League YouTube channel. You know, I tried to get our podcast up on Spotify. I did the whole application, and apparently they don't tell you, like they don't respond to tell you if you've been approved or not, and I completely forgot that I had done that. And I went and checked yesterday, but we're not on there. So that's too bad. But we are on iTunes. We are on SoundCloud as well. So greetings, Blunt Man, Danny Boy. Welcome, everybody. So we had some breaking news. I mean, it's kind of been breaking since last night, but we decided sort of right quick before going live here that we were going to shift gears a little bit on what we were talking about and talk about this Elder Scrolls 6 fake news that's going around. So there is an analyst who has made
We should clarify. It's not fake news. It's idiotic, moronic, stupid news for stupid people.
It's not that. Yeah, it's not that. It's not that something false has been.
We didn't want to put that. Yeah, we didn't want to put that in the title because A, it's a little long, and B, it's really inflammatory.
Gotta be concise.
But I'm pissed off about this. I'm really peeved. So anyways, keep going.
So what's happened is that there's an analyst made by a prediction made by a gaming analyst named Michael Patcher.
And I really have to sorry, I need to interject again. When we say analyst, we mean person who calls themselves an analyst who has basically a 0% accuracy rating in the history of gaming, aside from calling things that are like, you know, extraordinarily obvious. So
or just so general really that you can
respect this guy. I am not one of these people. I am in the industry of doing analytic work for more than one field of stuff, and I have to say that the fact that this guy can call himself an analyst is both disgusting and insulting to everybody who is an actual analyst.
Well, it's one of those things
I know that's a little inflammatory again, but I'm really kind of peeved about this. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like it's like calling yourself a counselor or a therapist might have a specific definition that you have to adhere to, but anybody, you can basically call yourself a coach or a counselor, and that can mean a million different things. An analyst, I think, you can call yourself an analyst and not be, it's not like there's some test you have to take to become a registered analyst. But anyway, so Michael Patcher made this prediction, and what's bizarre about this to me is not that he made this prediction. What's bizarre about it to me is all the people that are taking this and running with it and reporting on it. And that's where the fake news element comes in. Because, yes, it's true that he made this prediction, but why do we care? You know, I could say that Starfield is going to release tomorrow and Skittles are coming out of my butt. That doesn't, like, why would somebody report about that? So anyway,
especially when you have as shitty of a background as this guy does, and people are gonna say, but he was right about this. It's like everybody was, except for again other people in the industry that are just even more
I saw a list of
Bad at
the
their
predictions that he had gotten correct, and they were so general. Like, Nintendo's going to do well in 2018. Like, things like that.
Like, no shit. Anybody who got to see the what Nintendo was working on beforehand, and there were a few people. I was not amongst the people who got to review the like the early beta of the Zelda game, but I know people who did, and they said basically this new Zelda game is going to be, you know, amazing. It's going to knock your socks off. This is basically like everything that we've been wanting out of a Zelda game, and it's like Zelda meets Skyrim, and it's like it's amazing, and they have all these cool features and mechanics that nobody's ever done before, and like, oh my god, this stuff is wicked cool and wicked amazing, and everybody's freaking out about it.
Oh, yeah.
If he even got to talk to one person who had seen it, let alone seen it himself, of course you could say that and be like, oh well, you know, I'm God because I've been able to quantify this before it happened. It's like, dude, no, no.
So, it even says right here, he has been wrong on this. He has predicted a new Elder Scrolls game every year since 2016. So
it's like okay, you know what happens if I predicted a new Elder Scrolls every year since the release of the previous Elder Scrolls game? Eventually, I would be right.
Yeah,
imagine that. And again, it's like this guy gives analysts a terrible reputation because he's like, let's look at one of the other things.
We haven't even talked. I don't think we've even mentioned what he actually predicted. So he is predicting now
we're getting there.
Because of the flop of Fallout 76, Bethesda is going to push out Elder Scrolls 6 in 2019, which is absurd on so many levels. It doesn't make any sense. Like,
yeah.
But again, it's not really. It's not a big deal to me that somebody made this prediction, no matter how ridiculous it is. What is driving me crazy is all of these news outlets and YouTubers and people who are latching onto this. I mean, I know it's been a slow news week, people, but come on.
Well, it's not only that. It's the fact that people are looking for something to hate about Bethesda right now. Because they're angry. They're really angry that Bethesda basically, you know, they made a mess of 76. They did a lot of things that were a mixture of both stupid and also making an assumption that the audience would go for something that necessarily wasn't true. And they also kind of, you know, failed on the delivery. I hate to tell people this, and there's a lot of people who are really angry about this, and I completely understand, and I'm completely with you on a lot of the anger. I logged into Fallout 76 for the first time in like well over a month for the New Year's thing. Stood where they told us to stand for the New Year's thing, and the biggest thing that happened was somebody ran in, tried to shoot me while I was changing my character's appearance, and then shot a robot and then left. It's like okay.
Hey, that's how I spent my New Year's Eve too, shooting robots.
Yeah. So
I think some of them were your cousins.
A little bit annoyed. Yeah, a little bit annoyed that they said, "Hey, log in here, go here. There's going to be something cool." And what they meant is like you go there and you make your own cool thing happen. It's like, okay.
Let's just, it almost sounds like it was like, let's get as many people as we can into the same place, and then something fun will happen. And yet,
now, I met a couple people who happened to walk past. None of them had their mics on. I said hello, and I waved at them all, and like two of them waved back, and then they left. Now,
well, that is exciting. That's about the most exciting social interaction I've ever heard of coming out of Fallout 76.
Yeah,
I'm being facetious, of course, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, the problem is that people are saying, "Oh, it's a flop. It's a royal flop. It's a mess." In fact, this Michael guy says that this was a huge flop. Huge flop? No, not at all. So they spent basically next to no money working on this game. They got more than enough money to cover the money that went into making the game via their third-party Microsoft giving them a bunch of money and paying for a bunch of stuff, and most of their commercials were paid for in advance. It's why there's still YouTube commercials going on for 76. The other thing is that so financially it's not a flop. In fact, financially they made a ton of money off of this. The only way in which this game flopped was the reputation hit that they took, which was pretty severe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which was really, really severe and warranted. We've covered this before. They really need to stop being so flippant with their idiocracy when it comes to their fixes and their bugs and all this other stuff. Which again, I need to quickly reiterate, is completely avoidable, because most of their community in the mod network has come up with fixes. They came out with a fix for the widescreen version of the game, and they just did a tweak to the INI files. And it wasn't even that good of a tweak. And not to mention the fact that there's mods out there for Fallout 4 that do it in a way better way without a performance hit. And I would surmise if it's not damaging the performance of the game on Fallout 4, then it wouldn't cause undue stress on the servers. So for some reason they've gone with a dumber version of it. It's mind-boggling.
They've made a ton of mistakes, but it hasn't been like it hasn't sunk them financially. But I mean, Notional brings up a good point here that they might have broken even or made money on this project specifically, but the long-term financial hit due to the bad will, the reputation hit that you mentioned, I mean, that's going to have financial costs down the road. And this analyst
is it though? But is it though? Because this is the other point that I need to bring up beforehand, is that people say that this game is a huge flop. Hate to tell y'all, the numbers are slowly leaking out, but it seems like even in its current state, there's still almost 1 million people logging into this thing every week. Which is, like, what? Again, you can't call something like that a flop. A flop would be like, EA's latest game, holding less than 100,000 people on a server at any given time. It's like, ooh, that's bad. Again, Bethesda did not drop a ton of money into this. They dropped nearly zero into this to create this. When all is said and done, they basically broke even before the game even sold, before they took any orders, pre-orders, or anything like that. They basically ran even with this.
Yeah, but you can't deny that they've taken a massive, as far as their goodwill capital, as far as...
Oh, yes, 100%. Now, Dark Hollow, you're shocked that they sold over 1 million copies. No. There's 1 million people playing the game. There's over 4 million copies that have been sold. That's the thing. Now, that those numbers aren't secure 100% yet, and that's not
There's
something
some
that
deductions being made there, but yeah, it's about...
That's basically deductive work and a bunch of other things. So, here's the thing, Sword Sister, is she's asking about the refund rate. They don't have a refund policy there. They've refunded only a handful of gamers that basically got really noisy about it. Other than that, pretty much there's like their refund ratio is like less than 0.05% right now. So I mean, at most they've refunded less than 100,000 copies, which is again it's like shocking. Now they have a lot of physical copies that they put out because they were expecting them to sell more, but those physical copies are basically like, it takes about $1 to make them each, so it's not that much. So yes, there's definite problems, and all of those things, we've bashed on 76 and it deserves it. They are working on the game, and they're doing a crappy job of it, because every time they come out with a new patch, they make things a little bit worse, and it's very unplayable right now due to like they nerfed legendaries. They nerfed the rate at which you encounter legendary mobs. They did it across the board massively. So there were places that you could go that you could farm like a legendary like every 2 minutes, and now even in those places you only encounter a legendary once every like 10 minutes. It's like, ooh, ouch. That's bad, because now that means that you remember when you're out in the world and you encountered a legendary once every 10 minutes, now you're lucky if you encounter one every hour. So again, it's like, somebody really screwed up
and
here.
they keep making mistakes with it. Like,
Anyways,
just. But so going forward though, like, do you not think this is going to take a financial toll in terms of people hesitating to buy Starfield when it comes out?
No. See, once the trailer comes out for Starfield, and once people get their hands on it, and let's make some assumptions here, because I am making assumptions when I say casually kind of flip this off and say no. The assumption is that they've managed to do with the game, they have managed to create a game that is as good playability wise as any game that we expect from them, with very few bugs. Everything works a lot better than it did, certainly in Fallout 4, but obviously a million times better than Fallout 76. If they could pull that off, then everybody will be, cheering and shouting and saying, "Oh my goodness, they learned so much." They're when in reality this was always the plan. They've always been planning to make improvements and adjustments. They're not stupid. They're not retards. Like, they made some really dumb decisions, and they had a moment of pure idiocracy when it came to Fallout 76. But that's not inherent of all of what they do. They've understood that there's this draw to get back into harder mechanics and stuff like that, and to at least add the option for that kind of stuff. And going forward, we will see this kind of hit with Starfield, is my prediction. If the game is not a bug-riddled mess filled with microtransactions, which we know that it's not, doesn't have the latter, for the moment, at least at launch it won't. They might add in like the creator mods and for sale and stuff like that, but I don't think that we're going to see them do any of this kind of stupid crap. So if that's the case, then when this game will come out, and you'll see a ton of people praising this game and praising Bethesda for having listened to them, and they'll delude themselves into thinking that they had something to do with that, when really that was the plan all along. Bethesda said before, as many times as they talked about 76, is that 76 is something that they have never done before, and they anticipated a ton of bugs, more so than normal. And they also went out to say, hey guys, just so you know, this is going to be a really bumpy ride. They said this multiple times, and then people are like, oh my goodness, this is a bumpy ride? Burn the studio to the ground. It's like, ooh,
I don't think that's the extent of it, though. Like, I don't think the in-game bugs and stuff is frustrating, but
the design choices
so much
as well.
Well, all the stuff surrounding the game too, the nylon bags, the rum, the leaking of people's personal data, like they've lost a lot of goodwill with people.
Yes, they have. As far as the rum goes, now we were talking about this with Mad Queen. I don't know where people got the idea that the glass, that the bottle was going to be the shape of the bottle that you saw. And again, I'm sitting back there and trying to think about this, because we talked about this before it became big news. I was like, she said, they put this thing into a plastic case, and I was like, yeah, that was the plan from the beginning. That was shown like in early drafts of this, and I was trying to figure out, like, was that shown publicly, or was some of that information that I had ahead of time for? And I couldn't remember whether or not I knew about that ahead of time because of or whatnot. But I was never expecting a glass container ever. I was expecting a plastic like a plastic shell that would hold the bottle, the glass bottle that was inside of it. And the reason for that is that there's a couple of things that so bottles have to be built in a particular way to make them like structurally safe for transport, and you can't just create a new style of bottle like the Nuka-Cola Fat Bomb bottle and then ship it without encountering a large amount of rules, especially when it comes to alcoholic drinks, if you're planning on selling it anywhere other than 1 or 2 states. Alcohol is one of these things that the bureaucrats have really like dug their claws into, and this affects everything from the way that the bottle looks, to the shape, to the size, to the way that it pours, to who makes the bottles, to where you can get the lineup with. It's actually a really complicated issue. Again, nothing that I expected the average person to know ahead of time. But something that I did expect some of the reviewers to know ahead of time, that no, they can't just make a bottle like that. It doesn't work like that. The process that you'd have to go through would be monumental, and it would also be relatively difficult, and it would also limit where you could sell it down to like less than half of the states in the States, and there's a lot of places like Canada where you couldn't even sell it at all, because again, it's a bureaucratic mess that governs what you can or cannot do with whatever you want to do, and there's rules that are artificial, fake, and stupid. I can't talk about this enough. Bureaucratic governments are the one of the worst things on the planet to have to deal with, next to like pirates, thieves and murderers and cutthroats. It's like these are the type of people who their entire livelihood depends on them making life difficult for you, and they embrace it. Okay, so it's like.
Okay. But your average consumer doesn't care about all that. What they care about is the false impression they were given. And I think,
Yes.
I mean, if you knew that ahead of time, I think you were one of very few who knew ahead of time, okay, it was going to be this way instead of that way. And anyway, I mean, we don't need to talk that to death, but the thing is, they've lost, again, I'll call it goodwill capital, or their reputation has really, and I mean, is it going to cause a major hit to Starfield? Well, probably not. But I am on board with, like, this analyst got one thing right in the sense that Bethesda does need a hit. Well, I hope that it takes a toll on their pre-orders.
Absolutely.
I hope so.
It will.
Everybody should just stop pre-ordering.
People...
If 2018 taught us anything, we should all stop pre-ordering games, period. And we've had people telling us this for years now. The late... what's his... Cynical Brit? Total Biscuit.
Yes.
The guy who passed away, sadly, this past year. He's been telling us that for years, and other people have been saying that for years, and it's time to start sitting up and actually listening to this. We have got to stop pre-ordering games, because these big companies are just taking advantage, and we're going to talk about this a little bit with regard to Anthem in a bit, but we've got to stop this. I mean, until they start delivering quality products and we can be assured of that, we've got to stop. So no, I mean, let's not pre-order Starfield, even though they're going to offer us some bonuses to pre-order. We've got to sit back and think about what effect that actually has on the whole industry.
When I say pre-order, I mean like wait until you get the wait until you can see the product in depth. So, for example, we'll take Anthem, because we're going to talk about this a little bit later, and we'll just briefly talk about it now. The only people that should be pre-ordering Anthem this month are people who are going to be in the early access, who are going to show it and review it for review sakes. I honestly don't think that any gamer should at all get into a game ahead of time with a pre-order. It's like no, stop. And even with that, we're only going to pre-order it like a day ahead of the due time for us to get into the alpha, or the beta, or whatever they're calling this one. So it's like we're not being. I'm going to go on a tangent. So anyways, so this whole we haven't even gotten to this thing. So Michael, this analyst, says that Elder Scrolls is going to come out.
Yeah, we covered that.
Redfall is going to come out this year, and we didn't really go into why this is complete horse crap. For starters, they're still in the process of nailing down the name for this. They are in the third step right now. They're in the third step right now. The third step phase of which there's about 7 steps for claiming the name Redfall for the game. This will get done, and they'll be into the final step, in which is can be extended out for about 4 years. They'll be in that final step come probably November this year, October, November at the earliest. So even if they somehow could magically get this game ready by November, there's a good chance that when they start like doing trailers and stuff for it, like midsummer, that they don't even have the copyright and the trademark rights to the name Redfall, which means that somebody could step in and really screw it up. You do this stuff in a year in advance at the very minimum. Sometimes you do it like 3 or 4 years ahead of time, because you know that you can extend it up to like 4 years. So you start the process 4 years prior to the game's release, and then you know that once the process starts, then that takes about a year, and then you can extend that about another 4 years. So you give yourself about a year's worth of wiggle room if you have to delay it for some reason, for any emergency kind of reason. So even if they could magically get this game out this year, the bloody copyrights and the trademarks could not be filed until the very end of 2019. So I'm really confused as to why any analyst worth his salt would go out on a limb and say, oh yeah, this game's going to come out this year, when it's not even the next game that they have working on. Like, what are they going to do with Starfield? He doesn't even mention Starfield in his report, and I think he honestly forgot about it.
Yeah,
probably. I feel that he legitimately completely forgot that Starfield is a thing that they're working on. Starfield has been in the works for well over 10 years as far as writing and conceptual design. And then right after they finished up with Fallout 4, they started to work on the engine for the new this new game, for Starfield. They started working on the engine. They've upgraded and completely changed out the animation engine. They've done a whole bunch of other things to the core engine. We were talking about the legacy code a couple of podcasts ago, and how the legacy code is still a problem and it causes a lot of issues in that. The Atlas core of it being one of those things that is problematic to the game and causes some constipation with trying to put it into a multiplayer system, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It causes constipation.
Yeah, it causes major constipation for the programmers.
I think you meant consternation.
I have heard from a pretty legitimate source that Atlas is not going to be a factor in Starfield. So if that's not going to be a factor, then that's one major part of the legacy code that's gone. And how it ended up getting removed is they removed it from Fallout 76. So if they've removed it from Fallout 76, then that change can reflect into, and will reflect into, Starfield, because that was a change that they made pretty early on. The animation engine is new, and some of the systems that it comes to scripting has also been majorly improved. And they're working on I think an 86 version of the scripting engine as well, which is like huge. It's like, that's multiple times better than the original Skyrim. Like that's that's like 10 Skyrims worth of coding that you can fit into just a little bit of this thing. So this is really good. Like this is all really solid stuff and info that we're starting to hear on the rumor line, which again, none of this is confirmed. The only thing that's confirmed is that that Bethesda, and aka ZeniMax, is in the process of holding down the title The Elder Scrolls 6 Redfall. That is 100%. If you want, you can come to our Discord, and I'll link you the government paperwork on that, because it's really interesting to give it over a read and to see how they're planning on doing it in the future, and what all entails into the process. And again, it's like, this stuff is really simple. If you take like an hour, you can kind of read through the basic guide. In fact, I'll do this right now. I'm going to post this in here. This is the timeline. If you're interested, you go to this website, and this will affect the timeline of how what's the term? How the trademark timelines work. And here's the website, which I believe works. I will just make sure that it doesn't. Oh no, I messed that up somewhere. Okay, I will
All right,
figure
well,
out.
come to our Discord
there.
server, and Saib can post that info there. If you want to keep the conversation going after the live broadcast, we welcome all of you to join our Discord community. You can find the link in the description below. It's a place where you can chat with us and other Triple S fans about all the things we love to talk about, which is, of course, video games and all kinds of other nerdy stuff as well. I mean, we have a channel for anime, for TV and movies, that kind of thing. If you want to see any other channels, just let us know. We're happy to add some. Click the link below to join, and be sure to say hi to us in the welcome channel.
There we go. I got it.
You got it in there. Okay. So a few chat comments I wanted to read here.
Sorry, I mispronounced like one, or I mistyped like one word.
Oh yeah.
But yes, this process, you can see how the process goes through. It's actually a pretty short read, considering it's a government. It's a government process, an international government process too. On top of that, it's like, oh my goodness, you'd expect this to be like, 3 days worth of reading. No, 14 pretty short steps on how it works and how the process goes, and it also covers timelines and that as well. So if a company is on step 1 or 2, and they're stating that they're going to put out the game in the next 3 months, that's horse crap, because that, unless they're launching a game with a name that they don't own, that somebody could potentially walk in and steal from them, and or at least take them to court over and drag them through the court for years and years and years. It's like, ooh, yeah, no.
It's a long way away. I mean, based on there's so many reasons to think this game is a long way off. It's the next game after Starfield, so Now
that being said, this does give us an indication of when the release date will be for this game, which is a little bit sooner than I was anticipating. Like I said, you can extend this up to about 4 years, 4.5-ish, depending on kind of like where your starting period was, plus the initial start-up period of about 6 months. So that's 5 years tops. Now that's a hard deadline. So that means that we can say confidently that this game has to come out in the next 4.6 years. So, sorry, 4.8, yeah. So at the very latest, this game, if this is the actual, next Elder Scrolls game, will definitely be coming out near the end of 2024. It cannot come out unless it comes out like early, like the first month or two of 2025. This game is going to be out anywhere between, probably, let's say, 2021 and 2024, which means we might actually get the next Fallout game by either like close to 2026 or 2027 is again and I said that last year. I was like, yeah, it's going to be like almost 10 years by the time we get the next Fallout game, but it could be the next 8 to 10 years. So that's actually not as bad as 10 plus.
I just briefly,
it looks like
briefly, what are we looking at as a release window for Starfield?
Starfield is probably going to come out between anywhere between this fall and the next fall, basically. Okay. Like this game was ready to drop last year, and they took it back to work out some more of the bugs and some more of the stuff. I suspect strongly that the game was pretty buggy, and they were basically talking about doing, that drop release last year, where they were, not last year, 2017. They were originally talking about doing, walking out on stage, dropping this thing on people and saying, it's coming out between the next 3 and 6 months. But for some reason, they took it back to work on it a little bit more, and then we didn't hear anything other than the trailer of it for this year. But what we know from a whole bunch of stuff, from what Todd has said on a couple of podcasts, to some other statements that he's made, to the process and hiring, like everything combined, put together, we know that we're going to get this game in the next, basically the next 24 months or less. And I would be shocked if it's not out in the next 16 months. I'm anticipating either a fall release this year or a really early spring release next year, so February, March, maybe 2020. But honestly, I'm kind of expecting it this year. They may decide to delay depending on other things that may or may not happen, and or they might be waiting for the new consoles to drop, which is also a real strong possibility as well. Like really, really, really strong. Like right now, all of the studios, all the consoles are looking to, to have a big title come the next release of games, the next generation release, and this might be really, really tempting for them to do. So it's definitely there. It's definitely has the appeal, not only for that, but also to maybe double dip. So releasing right before the next console generation, then releasing a upgraded version for the next console generation as well. So that is something that I wouldn't put past them. It's something that a lot of companies do, and they're really, really interested in that. And we've covered this a number of times in the past as to why you would really want to release a game right before the next console generation and then release it again after the new console generation is out, because you get to double dip, you get a lot of additional sales, and so
it's what we're expecting for Cyberpunk. Droblet says maybe they made Fallout 76 so crappy on purpose so that Starfield would look like a masterpiece by comparison.
This is actually kind of good thinking.
Probably not, but it's funny to think about them doing that.
I'll say this because I know it's going to be I know people are going to be irritated with me. 76 was like, this is the first time they've made a game like this. They've made a lot of mistakes, a lot of blunders. And I really wish they'd learn, but it was not malicious. I honest to God don't think it was malicious. I mean, who actively does that except for somebody who's wanting to destroy their company?
No, I don't think that it was like, we're not talking about EA level scheming behind the scenes. I don't think. I think we are talking about some serious. Now there might have been some of that at the ZeniMax level, but I'm not at the point of thinking that that Bethesda's out to get us. I think they made some serious mistakes, but
they did. They made a fairly serious mistake, and they are having a hard time rectifying it, which is problematic, and really showcases what they need to do better for the next series of games. And I don't think they're idiots, so I think they're going to be doing a lot of that kind of stuff. Now, as far as whoever's running the patches for 76, I think that person probably they are either not being given the power to do the changes that they need to, or they're just really bad at their job. The other thing that I need to point out here, that some of these videos putting out this news, they're so stupid, they're so dumb that they don't even know how to fact check themselves before they put a video out. And I've got to say this because this really, really annoyed me. So in one of the videos that covered this as a story, this whole,
the analysts predicting Elder Scrolls 6 in 2019.
One of the people talking about this talked about how, again, this is a play to the stockholders, and the stockholders are making all these decisions and demands, and that Bethesda stockholders are really impatient and they want, more profits. And hold on a second, because I don't think you know what you're talking about, because there are no stockholders in Bethesda or ZeniMax. It is privately owned company with private investors that own portions of the company, and they don't have the ability to walk in and make demands, period. That's not how ZeniMax is built as a company. It does not have people who call up the boss and say, hey, I'm really concerned about my investment here and my stock prices here, and you need to fix this. This is not at all how ZeniMax is built as a company, as an institution. It is not a publicly traded company. They do not have stockholders. They do not have shareholders that are that react in that kind of way. It is the majority of that company is owned by the people who work there. So, and again, how anybody in the industry can again, completely ignore this as a fact and go, oh, hey, this is a real popular line. I've been saying it in a whole bunch of my videos recently, and it's true when it comes to EA and Activision and a bunch of these other studios, 100%. It's even true when it comes to CD Projekt Red. Yes, they're all publicly traded companies. Bethesda's not. It never has been. It never has been. And there's some people out there who, again, I want to call them idiots, but I don't know. Maybe it's just because they've been, choking. Maybe they've been choking too much on their own fumes from their hate videos that they've been doing in the last couple of months. But I hate to tell you this, but you're wrong. 100%. ZeniMax is not owned by public anybody. It's owned by an ex-lawyer. 100% their Drobit. It's owned by a bunch of the staff that work there who built the company and who never at any point decided to go public with the company and sell stocks. Now, they have some quote-unquote investors who help throw money into them, but they're mainly a cash-based company, meaning that they make a game, they get rewarded for making that game, they put a ton of money in the bank and invest it in like guaranteed long-term high interest accounts, and then they run the company off of that money. That's what they've been doing from day one, and it has to do, again, the company's called Bethesda. For anybody who doesn't know the cultural relevance of that, you should probably do a head check, because you probably don't know what you're talking about. There are reasons why this company is not a publicly traded company, and the fact that the company is called Bethesda and ZeniMax is a really good indication if you know anything about culture, on a worldwide stage that happens to span a couple thousand years. Again, I understand that not many people know this, but still, just like
yeah, I wouldn't say that everyone should be expected to know that, but
that's a big
detail to overlook.
As a professional, like as somebody who talks about this stuff and who does analysts on this stuff, it's like you should know this. Like this is your
big
job.
Detail to overlook. That
it is
that it's not. A quick. It tells me that they didn't even try to look up Bethesda stock prices. Like a couple weeks ago, we were talking about all this. I went and tried to look up Bethesda stock prices before because I didn't know that they were privately held, and I couldn't find them. And that immediately told me something about it, right? So,
no.
Anyway, yeah. So it's kind of frustrating to see all this fake news going around, but that's why we try to try and our best to clear it up for you folks. So Rave says modders are looking at bringing multiplayer code from 76 into Fallout 4.
Yes.
Interesting.
It takes there's quite a bit of work that you have to do on that, because Atlas is built into Fallout 4. It's not built into 76. So it's going to take at the very least, you're looking at if you create a mod that can step in and basically turn off Atlas within the game, and then replace it with some like a cluster farm program, then you could probably do that. If not, you'd have to basically create a new install for the game, and then you'd have to install the game with the mod, basically uninstalling that portion of removing that portion of the core code and replacing it as it's installed, which is a really big process. Atlas, to answer the question, Atlas is a piece of legacy code that's in the engine that Bethesda uses to make Skyrim and Fallout 4, in which basically the entire game and the world runs off of constantly asking, where's Atlas? And Atlas is basically the player who's playing the game, or the player character. As you're walking around the world, the game is constantly asking, where is the player? Where is the player? Where is the player? Now, they don't call it the player in the code, they call it Atlas, so that therefore the name of the program is called Atlas. So Atlas is essentially you.
Not to be confused with the MMO that just came out.
Yeah. If you were to remove it, and I believe this was encountered in the Skyrim multiplayer, if you remove it, you suddenly aren't like when you walk into a room and NPCs start talking, they don't do that anymore, because why talk when the player's not near them? Like, not within like earshot, within like any shot basically. And so the world becomes a little lifeless when the NPCs in the world aren't registered and told that the player is now near them, and then they need to start doing what they're supposed to be doing. Otherwise, you'd flood the game with like running scripts of everything that's currently in the game existing all at the same time. So yeah, that's a quick rundown on what Atlas is in this particular case, and that's kind of where that goes.
All right. But speaking of things being added to Fallout 4, just have a couple of quick-fire news items I want to get to here before we go into sort of talking about the direction of the industry in 2019. So the mod that was aiming at recreating Fallout 3 in Fallout 4 has resumed production. It was shut down earlier this year, or I guess it turns out now it wasn't ever completely shut down, but there was a legal threat made because it was looking at using the audio files from Fallout 3. Anyway, the developers of the mod have now decided they're going to revoice all of the audio, and so they've resumed production, completely recreating Fallout 3 in Fallout 4, which seems like an insane task.
It's not as hard as some people think it is.
Maybe not. I mean, it's obviously it's a lot smaller than Fallout 4, but it's that's going to be lots and lots of hours, years of development that gets put into it to essentially recreate a game that already exists in a new version of the Fallout engine.
Now, I had heard that they were pretty far along with this, like not like nearing completion, but they were like a good like halfway through this when they ran into this problem. Because, of course, what happens when you're working on a project, you start talking about it, and then lawyers hear about it, and they start saying, you can't do that, which is not great. But there is there's a little bit of a silver lining here, and that is that Fallout 76 is not, Fallout 3 inside of Fallout 4, goodness sakes, math, is not, it's not that big of a project. There's only like, I think it's like a 50,000, 60,000-ish lines in Fallout 3. In comparison to Fallout 4, there's like over 100,000 just for the main two voice protagonists in the game.
Yeah, but
so
50,000 audio lines. That's
still a lot.
That is a ton, and especially for somebody to be doing in their spare time as a hobby.
But as a quick reference, like we talked about this beforehand, as a quick reference, when Liam Neeson came in to record his lines for Fallout 3, I think it was only there for like 2 days, because his lines are literally, I think he's got less than 100. I know that for sure in grand total, or it's pretty close to like 100. It's like Patrick Stewart in Oblivion. It's like in grand total he sat down to do it like a single day's worth of recording, and that was about it, because his characters only shows up at a very, very small amount, and then he's spoiler alert, he's killed off. Oh, shocker. But like that's kind of the state of this. So I'm more excited for this project now than I was before, because I knew they were going to run into problems. Now that they've cleared those problems, they're still working on it. This hopefully will get more of the old crew back on board with this, working on it, and maybe even attract some new people for it. And honestly, like, if this gets enough traction that they just make an open casting call and they're just going to basically just re-record lines, it's not actually that hard. Basically, to do this, the easiest way would be basically say, okay, here's all the lines straight from the game. Like, just you can download them. Like right now, if you have the game running, you can just go in and activate them all. Pick whoever you want and send us your version of this. Send it in, and we'll just pick the best ones and go forward. And so what this might actually mean is we might actually get more flair and more depth to the audio lines than we've gotten in previous times. So one of the things that always drove me nuts is, like, everybody says the exact same thing. Like, it's the exact same line. It's just by a different voice actor, and
Yeah,
once in a while,
that is
which is
Let's change
it
it
saves
up a bit.
time in the writing room and in the recording studio. It does not make the game feel much better, because I have occasionally run into this scenario where the randomly created NPC. Now, this is not supposed to normally happen, but the randomly created NPC number one is using the voice dialogue lines from one actor. We'll call him Joe because I can't actually remember his real name. I'm legitimately thinking of this one guy. He's a voice actor I've met a couple of times. He's done a ton of lines, and I hate his voice. I really fucking hate his voice, which is also why I'm not going to name him. But his voice is being used as the aggressor NPC number one. The NPC number two is using his own other lines. So it's the voice actor bullying himself and then trying to kill himself, which is just absolutely hilarious, because like I said, I hate the guy's voice. He's one of these voices where it's like, it's that and a couple of the characters from some anime where it's like, just please no, just stop. You're in the wrong industry. I don't understand why people like your voice. And it's like, oh good God, it's terrible. It's terrible. But anyways, yeah, it's not actually that hard. And I mean, we did in the mod that we made for Fallout 4, we have we have a couple thousand lines. Like it's honestly a lot of stuff. And we were doing one mod that kind of stalled out, unfortunately, but we had that had about 3,500 lines of dialogue, and we got like halfway through it, and then the person was like, I can't do this anymore. It's like, thanks. It's like, sheesh. But anyways, it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work, and for some of the main characters, obviously it's gonna be a lot more work than some of the other people involved in the project.
Oh, yeah, Rave is saying they should get our voice actor from Project Valkyrie to voice Sarah Lyons. That I wonder if she'd be interested in that. Well, Catriox wants to voice one of the NPCs. Well, I'm sure if you if you contact and send them a portfolio or something, I'm sure that they'd take a look at you, because they have a lot of voice lines to do. Dark Hollow, all the big overhaul mods have more voice acting than the vanilla games.
Yes, yeah.
So
well, in Skyrim, that's really easy. Fallout 3, that's really easy. Fallout 4, not as much.
It's tough
overall,
because of especially because of the voice protagonist. But then
yes,
but that game's just
making like companion mods like that's not very difficult. There's you often do as much as you can and whatnot, but overall it's like whatever. So
anyway, we should move on from that.
So here's a repeat story that I don't think you got on your list, but I'll throw it in now. So remember a couple days ago when the CFO of Activision got fired by Activision?
Yep.
Yeah. So today the CFO of Blizzard got fired by Blizzard.
All right.
So you might be saying, hold on now.
That's
both CFOs
bizarre,
from Blizzard and /Activision, both of them going at once. Yep. Both of them are gone.
And they're not the same guy.
No, it's one's a lady. The lady,
okay.
The CFO of Blizzard has been this lady. I can't remember her name off the top of my head.
Right.
But she's been there for like 6 years.
If anyone's not familiar with this story, so the CFO of Activision was fired, and it was interesting. It was interesting circumstances. We don't have an entirely clear picture of what was happening there, but it was looking like he was being courted by Netflix to become,
their CFO.
Their CFO, basically. Which was interesting because he had been at Activision for less than a year, and then there's all these connections being drawn between Activision's poor stock performance and was he jumping ship to because he knew that the company was failing, or was the company blaming him for the poor stock performance?
There's a couple of really important things here. So first of all, he doesn't have anything to do with the stock, so they wouldn't be blaming him for that. The CFO doesn't have any impact on the stock price, period, unless they make really bad spending decisions and embezzle tons and tons and tons of money. So there was a signing bonus that they made with this guy, because this guy was, he worked at, I think it was Disney for like 20 years. So he got out of college, basically, started working for Disney, and then worked for them for the next 20 years, worked his way up to a pretty major prominent position there. And then Blizzard said, hey, we're looking for somebody to do this. And he was like, okay, how much of a signing bonus are you going to give me? $10 million bucks. $10 million bucks to sign up with them. So $10 million, less than 2 years later, he's walking out the door going, see ya, I'm leaving now. And then like a day later, the CFO of Blizzard is like, yeah, I'm out of here too. I got a way better job offer and I'm going over there. And yeah, good luck with everything. Love you lots. Thanks for the money.
Yeah. Droblet, so CFO is the chief financial officer. They're basically the head number cruncher, accountant, that kind of a thing. They manage the money side, so they're not directly involved in what the company is producing necessarily. Like, so these people aren't involved in the game development. They're running the business side.
Mm-hmm. So, well, I mean, let's just go to Wikipedia here. So the Wikipedia response to this is a chief financial officer in the office of a company has the primary responsibility of managing the company's finances, including financial planning, management of financial risks, record keeping, financial reporting, in some sectors. That's basically all it is. So it's not a position that can affect like gameplay. Like, this isn't even the guy who makes a call saying, hey, we need more microtransactions, put more microtransactions in a game. No, their primary job in this is to just keep tabs of the money, keep all the record keeping, make sure that everybody's getting paid on time, making sure that when the board decides to send dividends out to the shareholders, that all the shareholders receive their money. This is not a control position within the company. This is a really, 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 really boring job, crunching numbers all day long, and signing checks and making sure that the accounts are accounted for. And yeah, it's an incredibly boring job.
But apparently, however, it comes with $10 million signing bonuses, which
yes, because you have to, if you want a company to run well, you have to make sure that this runs well. It's like you hear about this every once in a while, right? Like oh, so and so got his check from his work, and there were 3 extra zeros attached to it, and he held on to it for like a year, didn't say a damn thing, and then quit the job. In which case, at that point, he can walk away and legally keep the money. Now, the company can sue for it, or the company could try and manipulate some records to show that he had embezzled that much or whatnot. And there is some legal steps that one can take, but basically that was the CFO dropping their, they dropped the ball on that. Basically, they looked at the end of the pay period and said, okay, so this month we've had no new employees since last month, and yet we spent an extra $5 million. Huh. I'm sure it'll sort itself out. That's what happens there.
Yeah.
So this is that exact case of like, basically, you're not the one signing every single check for every single employee. You have secretaries and lower people that do that, but you are at the end of the day looking at all of their reports and looking at what they've done and making sure that there's nothing wrong with the numbers or anything like that. It's really, really boring work. It's like an analyst's job. Most of our work is really boring and very uninteresting to a lot of people. However, we do have insights, as does the CFO, into a lot of really important decisions that are being made. Yeah. They are definitely in the boardroom for most meetings. They are definitely present for a lot of lawyer talk, and they are definitely there for when they're getting the basically the outlook of what the company's looking like in the future. And right now, the company ain't looking so good. Blizzard and Activision is not doing well at all. All of their games are on the downward swing. They've lost They haven't posted numbers, but there's strong belief that they've lost well over 50% of the players in pretty much everything. That they've lost a good 20% to 30% of players that are currently playing Overwatch. They've lost nearly, from some reports, if some reports are to believe, they've lost about 70% of the players currently playing WoW. If some other reports are to be made, for sure, they've had a drastic drop in people playing Diablo, and Heroes of the Storm has always been crap, basically. And ultimately, this boils down to the fact that I think now that it was just the one we could say, you know, he got courted and he got a ton of money from Netflix, so yes, of course he would bounce. If somebody offered you $20 million to bounce from your company, you'd probably do it, right? And especially if it came with like a guaranteed employment for the next 10 years. It's like, yeah, you jump at that opportunity. Most people would. However, in this particular case, you know, somebody made a, you know, this guy basically looking at what's going on around him, and then this lady, the CFO for the Blizzard side of things, they're both looking at each other and they're both like, I would not be shocked at all. This is something that we'll probably never, ever, ever know for sure. But I'm sure he met with her at some point. They were having a meeting for something. And one of them said, you know, things aren't looking really too good here. And one of them said, yeah, you know, don't tell anybody, but I'm actually looking, I'm getting courted by somebody else, and if you want, I can hook you up too, because, you know.
Yeah. Well, do we know where the Blizzard CFO is going, or why she?
Not yet. Not yet. She wasn't canned in the same way that he was. He was basically put on suspension right away because they found out that he was being courted by Netflix. She, however, just walked out. Basically, is what she did. She
wasn't fired.
She gave notice. Yeah, she gave notice and walked out of the company, basically. That
maybe she was sitting in on the meeting where they decided they were going to sell the red dot in the targeting reticle, and was like, "I'm
no." She's from the Blizzard. She's from the Blizzard side of things, so she wouldn't have had anything to do with that.
Fair enough, but maybe I'm just envisioning them saying, "Okay, they want to sell the red dot on the targeting reticle for a $1 microtransaction. This company is going down." Like.
Yeah.
If their job is forecasting, as Notional points out, and they see the writing on the wall and see that, you know, okay, we're pissing off all our customers with all this crap, and now we're doubling down on the crap. Yeah, I'd want a GTFO as well.
Yes, and Notional, you're 100% right. A, they must not have phones, and B, they do forecasting and strategies, and they probably saw the writing on the wall, and they're going, well, this. You know, they're not saying, you know, don't overemphasize this, because, you know, as an analyst, you don't want to overjump things. They're probably not looking at the company falling on its face. I mean, they're both big enough companies that if they lost a considerable amount of money and they kept losing, that they'd eventually just, like, there's a way that Blizzard will be able to, if its board at Blizzard was able to, they would in some way, shape, or form be able to shear themselves off of Activision. There is some stuff that's been set up in that way, but it would take, like, basically unanimous support from both the company, the employees, and then they'd have to be willing to basically go through a really long and bloody process to cut themselves off of Activision, or they just, or if Activision just like, you know, basically is put into bankruptcy. That makes them cutting off their losses a lot easier. See, when your opponent dies, it's a whole hell of a lot easier to declare yourself the winner if your opponent retreats. If your opponent retreats, then you can both sit there claiming that you're the victor till the dogs come home, and eventually, you know, the decision may never be properly made, and you may end up having a lot of IPs and stuff like that held up in limbo for a really long time. However, if Activision just dies straight out, then essentially Blizzard's free, as long as they can pay off their creditors to what, you know, they quote unquote owed, and if they were able to leave the company or leave as a singular asset that's that either buys themselves out or somebody else buys them out, then they can leave Activision's crumbling state. So if this is the case, then what we're looking at for sure coming down the road here is is the fact that we're able to look at this, and we're able to kind of back up and say, yeah, I think they saw the writing on the wall and decided it was time to leave. And it's one of them, you could put that off to, oh, clearly he just got a better offer and he walked away. But two of them, and then all these other people that are taking the buyouts that they've offered, that the fact that that a whole bunch of not only the customer servicing people, but also a lot of developers, this is coming out now too, which went under the radar and got missed. You heard about the 100 or so employees from the European customer service thing that walked out with the offer that the company made to buy out their, to say, here, have a year severance if you leave the company right now. But also we found out that a whole bunch of developers from various ends of the studio, they all walked as well and took the offer. They took a year's wage and walked off the company. And that's a lot of people. It's not a huge amount. I mean, Blizzard has probably close to 500 or 600 developers easily, probably way more than that. I haven't looked at the numbers for a while, but they're a big company. They can afford to lose that. However, they've just lost a lot of people, and I suspect strongly that more and more people are looking at the company and going, you know what? For years I've been at this job that doesn't pay. Everybody knows in the industry that Blizzard pays crap. They do. They really don't pay their employees very well. The only thing that was worth it at that company was the fact that you could get stock options as part of your payment. So if you lived with a whole bunch of other employees, you didn't own a car, you basically all mixed your costs, and you basically spent 20 hours a day at the company essentially, and managed to eat, sleep, eat, shower, pretty much do everything there. Only went out once a week basically to do anything, or even if that, then the only bright side of it is the fact that you could get stock options, which could be worth a lot. However, in the last 3 months, their stock has fallen through the floor.
Yeah.
And so the stock options, in a lot of cases, you've now made basically people who put in their a bunch of money into the stock options in October, all the way through this year, from the spring through the summer into the fall, you're putting all your money in the stocks, and then this whole fallout happens. You would have been better taking the cash and doing basically anything else with it. You basically just lost half of what you were planning on making for the year, which means that some of these employees have moved from above the poverty line to below the poverty line because of this whole mess. So think about that for a second. There are people working just as they do at Amazon. There are people working for this gigantic company, working 30, 40 hours a week, that are essentially under the poverty line because they're getting paid next to nothing, period. And it's disgusting. And why any of them would want to stick around, I don't know. And it clearly is the state now that more and more people are just walking away, because it's you know what, this company used to be great to work for. You used to at least have the clout, the name. You used to be able to walk into a room and say, I work for Blizzard, and you'd have people fawning all over you. That's not the case anymore. So why stick it out? Why stick it out when you join in with CD Projekt Red or something like that, where you're getting paid 3 times the amount that you are, even though CD Projekt Red has kind of a small reputation of not, your day-to-day wages are actually a little bit on the lower side, but you get these great bonuses every time they launch a game. So, overall, it would be way better to work for a company like that, even that, when you could be working for a handful of other companies, and you could be doing, you could be getting paid 2 or 3 times that what you're getting paid now. If you joined a particularly well-funded indie studio, for example, there's potential for you to be making 2 to 3 times the amount that you're making, at any of the other studios that pay more, let alone Blizzard right now. It's disgusting. You live in California where the living cost is through the roof, and you're getting paid, half of that at which people who live in low cost areas are getting paid. It's like, you can't do it. You just can't do it. So,
right. Well,
yeah.
That's so yeah, the outlook is not looking great for that, and this kind of brings us to, we wanted to just touch on the direction of the industry in general in 2019. We're already running a little, well, we're not running long yet, but we're certainly getting close to our normal length of time that we spend on the podcast. But we put out a video yesterday that discussed some of, is the game industry crashing? Is it failing? And basically, to sum up, we're seeing there's been a bit of a downturn across the board over the last few months, which is just kind of normal stock market stuff. But there are a couple of companies, namely Activision, Blizzard, and EA, that are down more than the average, and there are reasons for that. So we're not looking at a game company, like, we're not looking at a complete game industry crash or complete game industry failure. Even the game industry crashes that have happened in the past, obviously the industry has recovered. The people who couldn't adapt, the companies that couldn't adapt went under, and the companies that could adapt, or the new companies that rose up to take their place, did very well. So, and Dark Hollow said that the AAA industry is in free fall at the moment, and I mean there's some truth to that. It's not across the board, but there's definitely you have these gigantic companies that are putting out these gigantic projects that cost a ton of money, and if they are not pleasing the fans, which in the case of, again, companies like EA or Activision Blizzard, they are taking a dump all over the fans, there's going to be problems. Your stock price is going to suffer. You're not too big to fail.
And it's not all stock in the tech industry. There's a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's a bear market for all technological stocks." No. AMD has ended well above positive. Microsoft has landed well above positive. Nvidia took a pretty harsh crash this year. However, their income is through the roof. Their stocks are down. Their income is up. Why? Because they moved in the last 2 years, they moved every single product that they've created within a 2-month span, I think it is. So basically, it's like they have kept nothing on the shelves. They've made they don't have warehouses full of any product sitting there not selling. And they have a list of new products coming out for the next year that are more powerful and way cheaper than their previous products. Part of that has to do with the fact that AMD has a bunch of this new tech that they're going to be offering. NVIDIA doesn't have access to some of that tech now, but what they have been able to do is they have been able to increase the horsepower and then drop the cost considerably, which means that, again, NVIDIA stock might be actually really, really good if you're into stocks. There's a really good chance that it would be a really good idea to buy into their stock while it's so low right now. It's really low right now. In the last I think, what is it? Yeah. So just today it's gone up like $5. But I mean, it's been doing that for the last couple of weeks. But overall, that's up through the roof. We've got like Intel Corp, they're not any worse than they were at the beginning of the year. Which again, Intel, that's fine. A lot of this stuff is, there's some companies that did really dumb things, and most of that is in areas of the tech world that they're newer companies. They thought they were riding this ultimate high, and they made some really bad decisions, and now it's coming back to hurt them. But basically, it's like we're looking at a market that's been hurting, but it has also had some wild movements up and down over the last couple of months, and I suspect we'll have a bumpy year. 2019 is going to be a really crazy bumpy year. There's going to be lots of highs, lots of lows, and I think come 2020, 2021, I think we will see a lot of this stuff turn around and start to take off again. So this isn't a long-term slump. In fact, there's lots and lots of areas where the economy is just through the roof, and I think we'll see it get nothing but better over the next couple of months. So yeah.
Okay. So we're seeing isolated drops. We're not seeing a complete gaming industry crash, but it is a good opportunity for indie developers and smaller studios to come and take the place of some of the larger companies that just are not delivering and that are suffering from some stock fall off. So lots of interesting stuff. I mean, 2019 should be a really interesting year, and I wanted to title this. We wound up having to change it, but also we didn't want the word crap in the title, just because of YouTube. But I wanted to title this, are things going to get better, or are we just going to see more of the same crap? And I think it's going to be a mixture of both. I have a feeling when Activision is deciding to sell a red dot for $1, so you can have a red dot on your targeting reticle, reticle, if you pay $1 microtransaction. Like, talk about trying to squeeze blood from a stone. Like, that's unbelievable. It seems like they're hell bent on driving themselves into the ground. And yeah, you're going to squeeze that money out, but that's not in the short term, and that's not a plan for long term success. That's ridiculous. But I think that we're going to see a lot of good stuff too. We're expecting good things from The Outer Worlds. We're expecting good things from Cyberpunk 2077. And, there's a bunch of other titles that we're anticipating this year that should be really good from good companies. So, just one more quick thing on the stocks, just to kind of show that we actually know what we're talking about on this. So, this year has been rough for the stock market. Has been all kinds of up and downs, but it was more up than down, which is really important. It was up for longer periods of time overall. And also another great way of forecasting like how the economy is doing is to look at holiday spending. And holiday spending was up huge this year. In some cases, it was up well over 20% in some cases. On average, it was up 5%. 5% gain on spending for the holiday, that is a really good barometer of the markets and what they're doing. And I mean, this impacts everything. So this impacts hardware for computers, games, consoles, all that kind of stuff. It also impacts for game sales, obviously. And so paying attention and knowing this kind of field is really important when you're looking at the whole thing as a kind of like the 5 mile up view. You're looking down and you're able to kind of see exactly what's going on pretty much everywhere as much as you can. And that's a really good sign. So despite the fact that the economy seems shaky and there's all kinds of craziness going on, and it's definitely like high stress for a lot of people right now in the financial industry, overall, everything is up significantly. We see anywhere between a 5 to 20% increase overall. And this is also impacting a lot of European areas. This is impacting a lot of general Asian areas as well. So like Japan, Taiwan, these are big places that Korea, of course, South Korea, and a lot of these places are people who are naturally invested into the tech and the video game industry. And with all of this stuff being up, when you see a company like Activision and EA being down so heavily, basically it means that they're, that in a market where everybody else is having a good year, like Amazon had a lot of ups and downs, they're finishing out the year ahead of time. There's a couple other companies that are getting a little bit more hammered here and there.
due to certain stock issues. Apple's getting kind of hurt pretty heavily, but most of their stuff happens to, like, a lot of their stuff has been in, is still currently in China. They're building some factories in North America again, but if being in China when the whole Chinese market is tanking, basically, that's gonna hurt your performance as well. So, but overall, like, things are looking up incredibly. So when EA and Activision are taking larger than average hits to their stock price, and you suddenly have their CFOs taking off to join other companies, this basically means that these companies are really not doing well and are potentially headed towards a full on crash. But when you look at, you know, other companies, like, you know, for example, CDPR did not, they had the same you know, summer bump. They did have that same, you know, October drop, and they have had the November drop, but from mid-November to now, they're actually up quite a bit. So, you know, they're doing quite well. CDPR is doing, honestly, really, really well, despite the fact that they didn't release a major product this, you know, in the last couple of weeks, and the one product that they did put out this year, for the card game, it was not received super well, but that did not negatively impact them as much as releasing a bad game, say, from EA did for EA. So overall, we're seeing good companies who are making good games being rewarded by both the community and the financial sector by, you know, making good products and making a good income. When you look at, you know, some of these other developers, wow, those idiots don't know what they're doing, apparently, because it's like, good grief, guys. Like, come on. Why keep spitting in the face of your fans when they're trying to tell you that you're doing something wrong? It's like, come on, please stop being, you know, this epic level of stupid. It's really quite.
Well, don't you know, we don't know what we want as gamers. You know,
clearly.
The big AAA corporations, they know what we want. We have to listen to them. Do we want to take a few minutes to discuss Anthem?
No more than we're going to cover Anthem in general, because we're gonna be able to do it in January here instead of having to wait to February. So we will be covering content for that. At this point, I think we're at the stage where we'll wait and see how it goes. So, like, we don't have any more new information than basically what's available to everybody else right now, and everybody is sitting back, kind of waiting. And there's a lot of people who are gonna assume that this game is gonna flop, and there's a lot of people who are gonna, you know, hope that this game does well. We're going to cover the game because we're close to the studio and because we cover games. That's what we do. But as far as Anthem goes, there's still a lot of, like, meh about it from the community. So we will be, of course, covering other games. We're going to be covering a bunch of stuff that comes out in February as well. We've also got some other games that are coming out in January here that we're going to cover. And so we're going to be, you know, keeping our eye out as much as we can for as much stuff. But when it comes to Anthem, yeah, we're gonna pre-order it to get the early access, to get in, to be able to show you guys videos and do some let's plays and figure out if the game is worth it. Then we encourage everybody to get in on the free beta weekend on the 1st of February. Get in for that, because that's really going to show us whether or not this game has any ability to stick whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And if there is no sticking power, then, I mean, you know, then we
move on to other things.
We move on.
We wait for the Outer Worlds and Cyberpunk.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple other ones that are halfway interesting.
Well, and I'm sure there's going to be tons of, like, we cover a bunch of little games that come out here and there. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we have a room on our Discord server where you can let us know what you would like to see us cover, put in suggestions for content, that kind of a thing. So definitely check that out. Definitely join the Discord server and join in the discussion there. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us today for the Augmented Reality Podcast. Before you leave, don't forget to slam that like button. We really appreciate that. It shows us that you appreciate this content, and it also tells YouTube that you appreciate this content, and it enables us to just do more, basically. And that's what we're trying to get to, a point where we can continually do more and more, give you guys more of the content that you want. So definitely tell us what you like, and tell us what you want us to do. So, I also want to especially thank our Patreon supporters, Old Man Manson and our 2 anonymous supporters. If you're listening after the fact on SoundCloud or iTunes, thank you for liking, subscribing, reviewing, all of that fun stuff. And hey, feel free to join us on Tuesday at noon Pacific Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time for the live show, where you can interact with us and other listeners and be a part of the discussion. The Augmented Reality Podcast is a presentation of the Triple S League. Check out our YouTube channel for game guides, reviews, comedy, news updates, and tons more quality gaming content. My name is Asheninity, and on behalf of Cybsidian, thank you so much for listening. Next podcast is on Tuesday, and we will see you there.